If I asked you right now how much of your revenue is being attributed to your email channel every single month, would you actually know the answer to that? Well, most brand owners that I talk to either don't know the answer or they say something like 15% and think that's pretty good. Well, it's not bad, but it means you're probably leaving 2 or 3 times more revenue on the table. So let me show you what good actually looks like. The benchmark is 30 to 50% of your total revenue from email. That's what really you should be shooting for. And that's what well-run ecom email programs hit consistently. Most brands are sitting at 10 to 20% and think that's normal. The gap between 15 and 40% is real money that you're leaving on the table. So just to, put this into perspective, you'll see 30 to 50% right here, which is well-run programs, consistent email revenue from optimized campaigns and flows. And then most brands are sitting at 10 to 20%, sometimes even less. Like I've seen 5 to 8% very commonly as well, which is again the typical email revenue percentage. So let's actually break this down and do the math, right? If you're doing 50K a month in revenue, let's say, at 15% email revenue being attributed, that's around $7,500 that you'd be making from email every single month. And now let's just say everything's the same. You're still doing 50K a month of revenue, but 40% of that is coming from your email channel. That's actually 20,000 per month that you'd be making from email. So the difference is that that's an extra $12,500 per month from the same exact email list that you'd be generating. So where should that email revenue come from? Well, your email revenue breaks down into two buckets, right? There's the flows, automations that run in the background, and then there's also the campaigns, which are the emails that you send manually. So I'd say a healthy split is roughly between 40 to 60% from each. So again, 40 to 60% of revenue from flows and 40 to 60% of revenue from campaigns. And this is obviously going to vary based off the brand and the type of products that you guys offer, and sort of a lot of different factors that go into it. But if most of your revenue is coming from flows, like let's say over 60% is coming from the flows, then you're probably not emailing your list enough in terms of campaigns. Your automations are doing a lot of the heavy lifting, but you're leaving a lot of money on the table by not staying in front of your subscribers with regular campaigns. If most of your revenue is coming from campaigns, then your flows are probably not pulling its weight. They're probably broken. They might be missing. You might not have the whole, robust infrastructure of flows that you need. You're basically manually hustling for every dollar instead of letting the automations work for you. So the 4 pillars that actually move the needle here, everything else is a distraction until these are dialed in right here. So list growth, deliverability, flows, and campaigns, just to do a quick self-assessment. So if you want to go into your account right now, you can actually see list growth, deliverability, flows, and campaigns. And just to kind of break down my point even further, if you want to actually know what your number is, you're going to go into your Klaviyo dashboard right here, and you'll see on the left side, this is like the total revenue for your store. And you can also break this down by time period. And then this is the attributed revenue. So this account that we're managing is at 57% total revenue being attributed through the email channel, with around 58% of that coming from campaigns and around 41% coming from flows. So this is a very, very healthy split. Because if you remember in our earlier slide here, 40 to 60% of revenue from flows and 40 to 60% of revenue from campaigns. Now, what you don't want to see is like 80% of revenue coming from campaigns and 20% from flows, or vice versa. 70 to 80% from flows and only like 20-30% from campaigns. It means that there's probably one or the other that could use a little bit more love. So yeah, basically, the first pillar is list growth. So is your pop-up converting at 6% or higher? Are you adding new subscribers every day? If your pop-up is at 2 to 3%, you're losing potential customers before they even enter your ecosystem. So target pop-up conversion rate is 6% plus. Oftentimes you'll see 8, 10, 12% as well. That's a very healthy list growth benchmark. And then an underperforming pop-up, which is very, very common. I've audited tons of accounts. Usually they're at that 2 to 4% mark. So obviously losing a lot of potential customers by not taking advantage of increasing your opt-in rate. Pillar 2 is deliverability. So are your open rates above 40%? When's the last time you cleaned your list? If your open rates are in the 20s or low 30s, your emails might not even be hitting the inbox. It's likely you're probably going to be hitting promotions or spam. So again, 40% plus is a healthy open rate. Your emails are definitely reaching the inbox. And then again, the 20 to 30% or lower is a big warning sign. Deliverability issues are very, very likely there. Pillar 3 is flows. So do you have at least 5 to 7 core flows built out? at minimum the welcome series, the abandoned cart, abandoned checkout, browse abandonment, post purchase, and win back. These are all very, very self-explanatory. I actually break this down in my 126-page email revenue playbook document. But yeah, these are all the flows at a bare minimum that should be built out. And then lastly, campaigns. Are you sending 2 to 3 campaigns per week consistently, not just when you have a sale? If you only show up when you want something, you're training your list to ignore you, simply put. So 2 to 3 campaigns per week, consistent sending schedule. Again, if you only show up when you want something, you're training your list to ignore you. You definitely don't want to be training your list to ignore you, or only train them to only buy something whenever you are running a sale. So that's pretty much it. These are the type of questions that you need to be asking yourself when it comes to, are you making the most out of your email channel? And the biggest benchmark that you are going to see, and the biggest KPI that you want to really focus on. Obviously, there's tons of KPIs that you want to focus on when it comes to your email channel, like open rates, click-through rates, conversion rates, opt-in rates, etc. But the biggest benchmark is how much of your overall attributable revenue is coming from the email channel. And these are the questions that you need to ask yourself. So just to recap those questions, is your pop-up converting at 6% or higher? Number 2, are your open rates above 40% in general throughout flows and campaigns? Do you have at least 5 to 7 core flows built out with, and not just built out, I'm talking about built out with like the correct triggers, the correct behaviors, the right number of emails, the right strategy within the emails. Again, these are all outlined in my 126-page playbook. Are you sending 2 to 3 campaigns per week consistently, and not just any campaigns, but 75 to 80% value driving, educational, nurture driving campaigns. The other 20 to 25%, promotional campaigns. If you're doing all those things consistently, then there's probably some other, sort of micro tweaks that are happening. But if you're doing all these things consistently, then, you should be at least bare minimum 30% of your revenue coming from emails. And then, if you're doing even more than that and you really follow everything in that playbook, you should be at, 40 to 50% plus. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Let me know if you have any questions at all, but that's pretty much what you need to focus on if you really want to make the most out of your email channel and really the benchmark that most e-com brands miss.